Hey everybody, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Mike Gibb. I run accountrecovery.net, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar on myth busting, artificial intelligence edition. When it comes to artificial intelligence, there seems to be just as much fiction as fact. Many companies will mention they are using AI technology, only have it to be more smoke and mirrors than true artificial intelligence. Knowing what is and what isn't AI can make a huge difference and save you a lot of time and money. So today, in this webinar that is being sponsored by Skit.ai, we've got a panel of experts here to break down some of the myths associated with artificial intelligence technology so you can tell the difference and make informed decisions. As I mentioned, this webinar is being sponsored by Skit.ai. Skit.ai is the accounts and receivables industry leading conversational voice AI company, enabling collection agencies to streamline and accelerate revenue recovery. Skit.ai's compliant, configurable, and easy to deploy solution enables businesses to automate nearly 1 million weekly consumer conversations. Skit.ai has been awarded several recognitions, including Disruptive Technology of the Year, the Stevie Bronze winner by the International Business Awards, and Startup of the Year in Artificial Intelligence 2021 by Entrepreneur India. Skit.ai is headquartered in New York City, and you can learn more about them by visiting them online at skit.ai. Let me introduce you to our panelists. J.R. Long has spent the majority of his career accumulating more than 25 years of experience in strategic planning, operational excellence, business development, and information technology. This expertise has been gained in large companies to smaller startups spanning the globe, working in both the healthcare and financial services industry. Most recently, JR has been working closely with experts in artificial intelligence, understanding the complexities and opportunities of the AI revolution. Porter Heath Morgan is an attorney and advisor who partners with clients to help their compliance and leadership initiatives. Heath is a third-generation collection attorney who has grown up in the industry and has 19 years of in-house counsel experience for collection agencies, collection law firms, debt buyers, healthcare providers, and technology companies. Heath is passionate about training and education and is a frequent speaker for ACA, NCBA, RMAI, and serves on the ACA Council of Delegates, while also being a founding member of the Colorado Creditors Bar Association, where he serves on the board of directors and as the CLE committee chair. Heath is licensed in Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Wyoming, and is a member of the Supreme Court Bar. Experienced professional in product management, complemented by a strong background in software engineering, encompassing diverse domains, including AI, SaaS, fintech, and healthcare. Namit Narang is a senior product manager at Skit.ai and leads the charters of integrations, compliance, and inbound voice products for the company's U.S. businesses. Before Skit.ai, he worked as a technical lead and software engineer in the healthcare technology space, building technology platforms for hospitals across the United States. Everyone who's watching us live today is absolutely invited to ask questions and submit comments during the course of our webinar. You can use the chat and the Q&A to submit your questions and comments. If you wish to participate anonymously, click on the anonymous button in the Q&A, and anything we receive from you is sent anonymously. All right, before we start kind of busting all of these AI myths, let's talk a little bit about what AI is. Maybe we can go around and just sort of have each of you sort of share your definitions or what you consider to be true AI, or you can address some of what you think the more common misconceptions about AI and credit and collections are. JR, why don't you kick us off?
Great. Thanks, Mike, and thanks for having me. Apologies, not on video. I'm mobile at the moment. So from my perspective, what I would say is, especially in the credit collections industry, really it refers to automating processes and analyzing data sets. And it's a broader term that encompasses all the large language models or LLMs that folks have come to know and understand, as well as NLP or natural language processing that exists. And so it really can streamline your operations and enhance decision making, but it doesn't replace the human or more importantly, the oversight that's needed in your day-to-day workflows.
Okay, excellent. Namit, your definition.
Sure. Thanks, Mike, for having me. I think AI essentially is, we refer it to as the simulation of human intelligence, right? Anything, a machine that can be trained to perform tasks that can, sort of have, perform human cognitive functions such as, decision making, as JR mentioned, learning, problem solving, etc. Right? So any machine who can generate or which can generate human-like behavior can be termed as an artificial intelligence. Of course, JR mentioned some examples of LLMs, automation, etc. But again, even basic automation that we used to do, in the back, where we would say that, automating some workflows, etc., that can be just a part of it. But how we can give those automations human-like behavior, that's what I would call artificial intelligence.
Okay, excellent. Heath, your definition?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to take a higher level, and I think your first question is important because that's probably where some myths about AI come from, is from the broadness and vagueness of the definition of it. Because and the reality is, you could be talking about something that's AI that's actually not generative at all, and has no AI basis. I mean, robotic process automation is a common one. Machine learning is a common one, where they're really sophisticated if this, then that type of outcomes. And there's nothing really generative about them. But the reality is, that's where we are. And as said, it simulates human intelligence, but it just uses a massive amount of data to be able to do that. But in the end, it's really if this, then that process. And I think some of the mystique about AI comes from the term black box algorithm, where we don't know how it generates that. And what we've seen over the last year and a half now, since ChatGPT's immersion, is one of the reasons that creators of that include black box algorithms is because there's a lot of copyright or potential copyright infringement that comes from the data scraping and data being used. I don't think if you had ownership to all the data that's being used, you would call it a black box algorithm, so to speak, because there is a process for how you can train your models to even generate certain types of responses. So, I think that's an important component. And I think, it's good to be clear about what systems can do and what they can't do, and define AI in those tasks. Because if we get caught up in marketing messaging about this is AI or that's AI, regulators are going to follow suit, and the regulators are going to broadly, regulate and over-regulate systems and processes that really aren't true AI. And they're just going to paint with the same broad brush that we do in the industry if we use too broad of terms for what this process is. But certainly, it's a hot topic. It's a popular word. It's a very hot marketing term to be used. And our industry has been flooded with that over the last year for sure.
Definitely. So the second part of that question is, what are some of the common misconceptions about AI? Heath, I think you addressed that, but Namit, JR, are there anything, is there anything that you want to add to that before we go on to our next topic?
Yeah, I think I can start with that. So I think some of the misconceptions that we have seen come up, and I think we at Skate are also sort of answering those questions a lot, are some misconceptions like, oh, AI can completely replace humans in collections, right? Specifically talking about, the credit and collection space, as as we all belong to it. So the major misconception like, oh, AI can replace humans, or, AI may not be completely secure or may not be completely compliant. These are some of the primary misconceptions that we see. We also see some misconceptions come up where we say that, oh, AI can handle everything and automate everything in the collection space, right? All of these are some of the misconceptions that we are seeing and sort of clarifying a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, Mike, I think the thing I would add to, I agree with what Namid said, and I would just add, I think the other kind of misconception is that, oh, it's this fully, autonomous thing, if you will, that, makes everything work better. And I go back to, for me, it's important to understand that it has to operate with human oversight. And that's especially true in the collections industry, when you think about the standards, both ethically and regulatory, that folks are bound by, that you really have to have strong oversight. And it certainly can, take routine tasks or research or things of that nature and make them much more powerful, but it can operate independently and shouldn't be viewed as such.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think what Nimit said well too, it's really a lot of myths come from over promises and marketing blitz messages. And the reality is a lot of companies in our industry that are, bringing AI to the industry are coming with a Silicon Valley venture capital mindset where their goal is to be a unicorn, and they don't really care as much about the regulations and compliance and things that we do. And sometimes there's some mixed messaging on the promises versus the compliance of that. And I've said here on these webinars before, our market is slow to adopt. Mike still doesn't give out awards at ArmTech or ArmLaw for most innovative company. If you're the most innovative, you typically get sued. And a lot of indie companies wait till other people get sued to see what the case law says about that. Now, we're not unique to this. I mean, certainly healthcare, government, financial services tends to be a bit forward on this and take more risk, but other industries that we work for, like the healthcare, like the government accounts, they have similar concerns about the protection of data, because really what it comes down to is you're engaging with the vendor for an AI use case, and how do you protect, store, and your data of things. And really, it's not just vendors that we are actively looking to add value to our services. It's the current vendors that we have, from Microsoft that has Copilot, Adobe that has Firefly, Zoom, this very call that's recording and can train this the transcript of this call for its AI data. A lot of companies are forcing AI use cases into our industry, whether it's a free product like we're normally accustomed to, or even a paid product, under the guise and promise that it's going to make your tasks or jobs or responsibilities easier.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with Heath on this. I think we've seen many companies coming in and sort of forcing that, but how can AI come in and sort of keep this data, as Heath was mentioning, secure? How can it be compliant? How all those data systems can be secure? I think that is something that can be worked on, and the industry can be more educated on that.
I think that might be the first myth we kind of busted without really even trying, and that is sort of AIs in everything and everywhere. So before we get to the next one, what are the current limitations of AI in credit collections? Or maybe frame it another way. If I'm trying to figure out whether something has AI or not, or whether it's true AI or what form of AI, are there tests? Are there questions? How can I sort of figure that out?
That's a great question, Mike. I'll start here on this question, and what our industry is experiencing is not new. We're honestly a little bit late. So if you collect on healthcare debt, there's a good chance that your healthcare provider clients have been sold AI products over the last 5 years. It's really, once the ChatGPT kind of explosion happened, that we looked for more use cases and branched out to different industries. But, the healthcare industry, there's been a lot of, again, marketing over promises and under delivering. And even now you'll find, you can talk to some healthcare providers and they've already been burned by an AI vendor that didn't work out. And so, obviously proof of concept, it's one thing to have promises and a demo, but actual proof of concept. And one thing that really, isn't mentioned enough when we talk about AI, because, a lot of them are coming with SaaS-based models, monthly subscription programs, and that pricing, again, from that venture capital business model. And what those companies look for is it was what's called total market fit. And really it's one thing to see a use case on a different software system that you're on, But if you're using a different software system and that vendor hasn't been on that software system before, you really don't have that total market fit yet. And so you almost have separate total market fits or product market fits for each software system out there. And I think that's a part of that myth, as far as, when you see, as far as what questions to ask, I'd ask, what other clients do you have on my software? That's a key part of it. I think the data part, where does my data go? Is there a transparent trail of data? Can I delete the data? I mean, the FTC safeguards says that we have vendors, we should be able to delete the data if we get, we can't just lose it to the, AI training data and never see it again. We have to have that transparency. And then I think too, I would look at, the ability to be adaptable to future regulations, right? We haven't had future regulations come in to our space yet. Colorado passed an AI bill. Most of the AI bills that have passed, and even then it was with reluctance. They're looking at, California's looking at one right now, but they're encouraging it not to happen yet. And most of the AI legislation is, let's form an AI committee and kind of see how we handle this. So regulations are still very early on. And what I would say is you want to internally find, I've said this before, kind of a playground or a sandbox that is free from potential regulations, because you don't want to invest $50,000 in an AI product or service that is going to be deemed illegal in 6 months or a year or two. You want to have a nice area. So I look at future government regulations. And the last thing I typically say too is you want to have your own internal risk assessment when you're looking at the risks. What are the risks of data disclosure, third-party disclosure of that? What are the risks of consumer harm if we get an algorithm wrong and how we segment our accounts? Or what are the risks if we have a bot that hallucinates? I mean, we have plenty of use cases now of and customer service reps. Air Canada's AI bot offered free refunds. That wasn't part of their policy. There's all kinds of examples of how the conversational bots have hallucinated. And so, how do we prevent that from happening? Those are some of the risks and safeguards that I see when kind of vetting an AI vendor that I want to work with.
Sure. I think those are actually great pointers from Heath. I think taking on from that. So AI essentially, is just a part of the process when, someone from the credit collection space is trying to sort of, figure out a vendor for it. So from a current limitation standpoint, the AI should also be able to fit into a collection agency's ecosystem, right? For it to be a production ready system, for it to be actually used to customers. How that AI system, or be it conversational AI, maybe on some channel like an SMS or an email, how does that AI system fit into the system of the collection agency so that it has access to data of the customers, because that data would be used on the conversation. How is it able to maybe collect payments for them without involving humans? How is it able to do a variety of things? How does it fit into the ecosystem? I think that's the primary sort of criteria that any collection agency should look at. And I think that's one thing from a limitation standpoint they should look at. AI also, many a times may not be able to, do complex negotiations. That could be another, limitation of AI, where someone may, just taking an example, someone may want to make a payment, but, there could be complex negotiations around how much they want to pay, how much they can, pay to settle the debt, how many installments should it be broken down into, etc. Right. So I think these are some of the limitations that the AI systems are still catching up on to. But I think with time, there would be a space where these could also be sort of handled. And even on the compliance standpoint, right? The AI systems right now follow compliance according to the TCPA, the FDCPA, the regulation F, even the state level regulations. But how is, an AI vendor, or how is an AI, conversational bot be adaptable to future regulations that can come in? How is it built in a way that without much effort and proactively, without sort of waiting for the regulation to come in and then having a problem with that, how can it proactively solve for the problem before the regulation comes in, so that it's compliant, so-called compliant from day one of the new regulation? I think those are some of the key factors that sort of someone should look at.
Yeah, Mike, I think maybe just to add to briefly, tactically, I think for me, I look at data quality and bias, right? That's a limitation. It's the age-old adage of garbage in, garbage out. So, you have to be careful with that. And obviously what Heath and Namit said plays into that. And then I think the complex decision making, a lot of people just assume, well, AI is great at, this decision making, and it's really not so much. It's more excelling at pattern recognition and things of that nature. And so it does struggle with that nuanced, decision making where you need context or empathy to make an appropriate decision. And so I just highlight those as probably two crucial, critical limitations that you just have to factor into your strategy of what you're doing with the AI and understand that.
It's good you brought that up, JR, because the next myth I wanted to throw out there, something we've kind of touched on a little bit, and that is that AI can completely replace human collectors. And maybe I'm naive, JR, and I'm going to ask you first because you mentioned sort of the lack of empathy. I think, and maybe this is just something that'll happen one day, but I can't not believe that technology won't completely replace human collectors at some point. And when I say at some point, I think in the next 3 to 5 years. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And I've had some discussions and debates and with some different people in the industry about this, but what do you think obviously I think everyone would agree now that AI can't replace human collectors. That's probably a myth, but do you think that that'll ever be the case?
It's a great philosophical argument that I don't think we're, as an industry, isolated to. I do a lot of work in healthcare. It's the same question or conversation that comes up there. And I think, to highlight what you're saying, today, AI is a support tool, right? It enhances human performance. It doesn't replace it. It takes care of repetitive tasks or providing agents with insight. There's still a complex nature that requires a lot of human intervention. And I don't think that goes away for quite some time. I mean, I think to your point, certainly it could go away with time. You think about simple contrasts in history like the Industrial Revolution, right? It's no different than the automation of machinery and, building complex machines. But I think, we're certainly far away from that today. And I think what AI can do is take a lot of that routine, mundane contact and simple, exception free, if you will, use cases and remove those from the circuit. But there's still this human agent in the more challenging cases that do, require, as discussed earlier, negotiations and emotional sensitivity and things of that nature that, we're just not where we are today. We're not ready to, I think, move that to a autonomous entity, if you will. And if we are, then maybe that's a different conversation we're having about Skynet or something of that nature. I don't know, but that's my view on it, Mike.
Yeah, Mike, that's a great philosophical question. I love that you're having that conversation, and I agree with JR and a lot of that, because I think, as I've said before, we are in year 2 of a 10-year and probably even 15-year digital transformation on this. So, the comparison I give is that, we are back in 95, 94 when Yahoo was the search engine, and you go to yahoo.com and you wouldn't type in a website or company you want to find. You would scroll through different links of companies, categorized by news, weather, sports, politics, and you would and it actually list out the links that were there, and you click on that link and go to that page. It wasn't until a couple of years later that we had the actually type in a search and be able to generate results based off that research, that search query. And so, and even search inquiries are going through a disruption of their own with AI, kind of leading the way in that process too. But I think I'll throw another philosophical statement back to you, Mike, on this. I think the time of adoption to being able to have fully digital agents will correlate with the time that we see consumer adopt to having their own agents them using AI agents to negotiate with debt collectors. And the reason I say that is because, right now, all of our existing KPIs that we look at, talk time and things like that, we're trained in a certain way. So we know if a call is over 10 minutes long, as a compliance person, that's probably going to be a problem call. Someone's complaining over and over again, right? Because most consumers want to pay, get off the phone, and be done with it, right? So you're looking for a 3 to 4 minute call that pays. That's how we score an A call. Well, if consumers have agents that are doing this process, doing negotiation and using their iPhone to have Siri call and negotiate debts, they don't care about time anymore. So you could have AI agents trying to stall and delay and create a full process and make sure the whole validation process happens on the phone. And that's a whole, we're going to have agent to agent or bot to bot communication. And the hope is that we reach what's called the Nash equilibrium, where it's a resolution on both sides that everyone's happy with. But the reality is, consumers will also probably launch virus agents as well, trying to bait your agent or bait your human into violations. That's a low percentage of it, but that's a factor we have to realize that. So I think the level of adoption we see of consumers using agents and outsourcing that to a bot, that will kind of, if that happens in wide scale the next 3 to 4 years, then yeah, that's a perfect task that your agents can handle. Because I think the most inefficient process that you can have happen is have your humans, spending a lot of time on long calls with consumers' agents, and using up FTE hours when that could be done by an agent in the future.
Yep, absolutely. And I think what we see here as that, how an artificial agent can collaborate with an human agent. We call it, as I think of it, I think of it as a like collaborative intelligence, right? How sort of a human and a bot can work together and, sort of it would help boost agent performance as well. And, of course, AI can automate, as JR was also mentioning, automate, low level, repetitive tasks, etc., that an agent has to do to free up that time of an FTE. But how, apart from that, how can more automation come in through AI? How can, AI can help reach out to more customers in shorter periods of time? How can AI sort of, help in processing payments directly, can send reminders, etc. These are some of the things that, of course, AI can help in. How can also, conversational AI is one thing, but how it can also boost performance of the existing FTEs by sort of maybe, have, AI elements via SMS or email communication as well, right? There could also be, how can a multi-channel way of VRSkit, VRSkit look at it, like how, a multi-channel communication can come in through different channels, and how can intelligence of AI be built onto that, where AI can help boost agent productivity as well by deciding what is the right time to call the customer, which channel should be used to call the customer the best way. There may be cases where a customer prefers only communication via SMS. They don't want to pick up a call from a bot, right? And they want to just, converse via an SMS. So how can, and AI can build intelligence over it, so that, the agent can also decide what is the best time to call the customer, whether they should use email to communicate with them or voice, right? So these are some of the, use cases where we see, what AI can do and boost agent performance. But of course, can AI completely replace a human agent? That's still up for debates. And I like the idea that he put out about the Nash equilibrium. But again, can it happen in the next 2-3 years? I think that's time will tell that. But again, we right now see it as, more of a agent boosting performance rather than, replacement exactly.
We've got a couple of questions that have come in from the audience, so I'll pause mine for a second and throw those out there, but also use this as an opportunity to remind everybody watching, if you have a question for our panel, drop it in the chat, send it in through the Q&A. The first question is, are companies primarily looking at using AI to interface with customers or members?
It's a great question. Mike, I would just say from my perspective, and obviously I'm a little bit biased because I do a lot of work just on the consulting side, but a lot of the, I think, early adoption and less, flashy adoption is a lot of back end use cases. And so I would say, I think that's where folks have a lot more tolerance, obviously, and the lot less risk, as Heath would likely point out, to do internal adoptions and look at internal processes, knowledge bases, and other things like that you can do both in a, kind of using a public tool like a chat GPT, if you will, or even a private LLM that you can kind of build and customize within your own ecosystem. And so, for me, I think that's the least risky and in a lot of cases most attractive starting point for folks that haven't dabbled at all. Certainly there's a ton of vendors that are selling really great solutions that may or may not deliver the promises that are being made. But that would be, I don't know, my comments on that question. It's a great question.
Yeah, I agree with JR completely. I think, if you're categorizing it by risk, obviously consumer facing uses are in that higher risk category. I mean, just in terms of interacting with agents and the conversational AI. I mean, we now have in less than a year 2 proposed federal regulations on outbound calls. Interesting enough, we had the FCC came out in February. And really, what's crazy about it is, if you look at how that law came to be, it was because of a political phone call of a Democratic primary challenger to Joe Biden, Dean Phillips, who created a AI, voice of Joe Biden telling people not to show up and vote. And that happened in mid-January. And by February 8th, the FCC already had a final rule, no proposed time for rule or comment, a final rule saying that AI robocalls needed TCPA consent. We're seeing right now the FCC also proposed a rule on having to announce that you're an AI call, an outbound call. So that's definitely in terms of, one, high risk of terms of harm, the outbound calls, but also in terms of this regulation. So that safer sandbox that a lot of companies are gravitating to is the back end process, the non-consumer facing processes. Especially, I know, utilizing AI that's been out there for a while, from scanning PDFs and automating processes on the back end. A lot of agencies are using it for e-filing to actually file lawsuits through state websites. That's a common one that's been done. But yeah, really it comes down to I think where you're comfortable with in that safe sandbox, and then what are your biggest pain points and what are your biggest cost savings too, because maybe an AI use case for scanning PDFs doesn't cost much, and you just go ahead and go with it because the risk case is low and the price is right. Anytime you get up the stream in price, that's where we kind of see slower adoption, is kind of people wait around to see, can this be automated in a different way, or is there a new vendor going to come in and shake up the price if that price point is too high? Because even with RPA, 3 years ago it cost you $50,000 a bot, and now that cost is down to 5,000, or basically a bot. So we've seen drastic cost reduction as more companies get into this AI space that we're in right now.
Yep. And I think it depends on actually the goal of the agency, right, or the company. What are you looking at? Is it, reduction of cost? Is it something else, right? That's how, that's how I feel the decision should, whether AI should be, interfacing with customers, whether it should be doing some low-level tasks to automate to start with, as if you're dabbling, if you're a new member into the AI community, that's depends exactly on your goal. And as Heath also mentioned, right? With outbound, there are different sort of FCC compliance concerns coming in. FCC is putting up a few rules as well. That's why even we have seen customers, come up with inbound use cases more than outbound now, where they say that, oh, if I can I automate inbound to start with. That's also something that comes in a lot. But again, it depends on the goal. How do you want to look at it? I think that's where we should start on making a decision.
Here's another interesting question. Do you see the widespread adoption of digital communication, such as email, SMS, and chat, as a requirement to pushing AI into collections?
Yeah, I think I can take that. And so what we've seen is, and in general, a widespread adoption of digital communication, different channels, comes up as something that can be used to sort of push collections. But again, as I was mentioning earlier, depends on the moat there is how you can sort of figure out which sort of channel is actually the customer wanting to communicate on. Collections is anyway a hard way to sort of a hard job of an agent to sort of collect. Which channel will the consumer prefer? I think if you're able to figure that out, I think that is something that can sort of help in collections. So that should be the primary goal on that.
Yeah, I don't know that I call it a requirement, but I think there's definitely a correlation. And the reason I say that is because I think, companies that have adapted and incorporated email and text are usually doing it to try to find new ways to engage the consumer to resolve the account. It's basically trying to find the channel the consumer prefers. And I think AI is part of that. So if you are, companies that are kind of stuck in this is the way that we always do things, they're not going to adapt email or text. They're probably not going to adapt AI either. But companies that are curious about, how do consumers really want to be engaged with to self-serve their accounts in the portal, that correlation is going to be a natural correlation from email, text. Well, we can expand that and give more offerings to consumers through AI.
Yeah, and I mean, Mike, obviously that question slants a little bit towards leveraging it in an outbound capacity, right?
Mhm.
So I think, that it obviously has some inherent assumption there, as I think both Heath and Namit commented on. From my perspective, again, I think, that a lot of folks are somewhat overlooking, if you will, the internal nature of what you can do with AI. And I think as Heath put it, it's absolutely correct that it helps facilitate and goes along with that outbound communication and using those electronic channels, if you will, to, engage folks differently. But certainly not a requirement when you want to look at very simple internal use cases. Again, a knowledge base or automating a process, as Namit mentioned, reading PDFs, etc. There's a ton of efficiency. I think the broader question gets into what is your strategy, right? And making sure you have a clear strategy on what you want to do. And, not that you can pivot from that, but it needs to be evaluated that way and not a, catch-all solution, which is what folks tend to see. And then that's where the flashy, shiny object syndrome comes in and you lose track of what you're really trying to accomplish, getting kind of baited into something you may not really need.
Speaking of that, it's a good segue to the next myth I want to throw out there, and that is AI is expensive. I guess if I'm a smaller agency or a smaller operation or even just a smaller company in the financial services space, how can I effectively incorporate AI into my operation without breaking the bank?
It's a great question. I mean, my comment to that, Mike, would be that, I think where AI is today, and I agree with Heath on the kind of roadmap over the next, subsequent years, but really it can be cost effective, especially given the nature of the cloud-based solutions and kind of modular tools that are available to deploy it. And so I think the cost effectiveness of that really gets into that. And from my perspective, I would just challenge, obviously do an assessment, right? And understand, okay, this is going to impact this process in my operations this way. That actually saves me X amount of dollars. So that cost, at the end of the day, I'm still net plus in terms of the cost effective nature of that. And I think that's where, again, some of that preliminary work is super important to understand the cost benefit before you dive into something too deep.
Yeah, and I think there's certainly some big ticket AI items out there that do cost a lot, but there are also a lot of AI options that are relatively cheap and certainly been cheaper, as I mentioned about the RPA bots, that the price is really driven down to be affordable for even smaller agencies and companies. But there's always the free model too. I mean, there's companies are offering a lot of this AI technology as a free part of it. And if there's appropriate safeguards and you have, even using ChatGPT, right? If you are redacting any information you're giving as a prompt, you can upload policies and procedures that are redacted and have them rewrite them or have them convert them to training materials or work instructions. I mean, there's a lot of still possibility as long as you have those appropriate safeguards there. Now, those should be in place for everything, but especially with free models where they're going to take the data you give them and you don't really have the rights to delete that data if you put it in there. You don't want to be the Samsung engineers who uploaded their product manual into ChatGPT. But no, I mean, honestly, I mean, when as a third generation collection attorney, and my grandfather had an agency, my father has an agency, I have a vested interest in seeing, companies that want to stick around, be around in 10 years after we have all this disruption. And I think adopting to, use cases of AI technology, especially affordable use cases, that gives a nice, path for smaller, mid-sized companies to survive and thrive in the next 10 years. So yeah, I think, certainly there are some, big, flashy, big ticket AI applications out there, but there's a lot out there that's not that can actually be real practical and offer a lot of savings to your company.
Yeah, and I think as Heath mentioned, of course, there are a lot of cost effective AI solutions in the market, but in my opinion, I think more than cost, one should take a decision based on based on their return on investment that they would be making, right? Cost is of course one thing, but what is the kind of value that you are able to generate through that AI solution, right? I think whether it's collections, whether it's FT saving, right? What is the kind of value that you're able to generate through that solution versus the cost that you're able to pay? If net you're still on the positive end of it, I think that should be the more sort of ideal way to look at it, more than just cost. But of course, one can see two different spectrums here. Of course, there are systems who charge a lot, are very expensive, but of course you can find cost-effective systems as well. And if one is looking at it from an ROI perspective, I think that should be the way to go.
Okay, let's see here. Something we've kind of been hinting at and addressing in a couple of different forms, but the next myth I'll throw out there is that AI is going to solve all of the industry's problems. Is that a myth or not?
That's a myth. And if a salesperson is telling you that, run from that salesperson. A human's not going to solve all the industry's problems. It's not going to be one entity, AI or a human. It's going to be a combination of that. Our issues in the industry are way more nuanced of this. I mean, I don't even know where to start on the industry's issues. I mean, I think you can start with, even regulations or consumer mindset and consumer advocates feelings about and hostility towards our industry. AI is not going to change that. It's going to take humans. I mean, that's why we have lobbyists. It's why we have members get out there and agency companies get out there and tell our story, because ultimately, even in the collection process, a lot of it still has a human connection behind it. You're right. There's a human story for why we do the good work that we do that needs to be told, and you can't just outsource that to a bot. So I don't know how much we need to spend debunking that myth, but I think it's pretty clearly certainly a myth that AI can solve all of our world's problems.
Yeah, surely. I think AI is, if AI can solve problems, then humans are not all needed, right? But what we've seen is AI can solve some problems, but can it, again, as we were mentioning, can it completely replace humans so that AI will solve all the problems? That's actually not the case, right? There are some limitations to AI on what it can do, what kind of problems it can solve. But as long as an AI system is built in a compliant friendly way, being it's compliant across all systems. It can solve some problems, but again, can it solve all industry problems? Not at this time.
And I'll just add real quickly to that, I mean, to be clear, the vision that, even as there's changes within your company over the next 10 years, the vision is that your human employees are going to be co-working with AI bots or agents, right? It's not replacement. There's not, it's a co-working relationship that we're going to have with this. As I think JR mentioned, kind of a digital assistant where the AI can do the mundane, repetitive tasks, and your employees will actually be upskilled and oversee those processes in place. So, I know that's a common fear. AI is coming to take our jobs of your employees, and if you can give them that reassurance that your goal is to have them be coworkers with agents and have these agents do mundane tasks and let you do human thinking, that can help that reassurance.
Absolutely.
Comment here in the chat. Generally, nobody wants to talk to a chat bot, especially if they have questions or problems. But people who just want to make a payment, I think AI would be very useful.
Yep. I think that's actually a great point. Even at Skit, what we see is we've seen, a lot of people just come in just to make payments, and AI is very useful there, where AI can just, collect a customer's card information, sort of, have built-in compliance layers in place to ensure that that data is secure. But, just if a payment needs to be collected and customer just, wants to make a payment without talking to anybody, come in, give your card details, collect the payment. I think that's one of the most useful ways and most easy ways for collections as well, right? I think that's a great point.
I think that's definitely true right now. But I think if we do flip the script and empower consumers with their own AI agents, I think that's going to change. Because if you could talk to your iPhone and say, whatever I want to call my agent, contact XYZ collection agency, find out the data service, terms of this debt, and if I can have a payment plan, and launch that call to call either your bot or your agent, they don't care. They're not going to care if that agent is talking to a human or to an AI bot, as long as they can get the answers back to them to help them make the decision to make that payment.
Okay, moving on. I think we have time for one more myth here. Let me throw out this one. AI technology has a steep learning curve. Fact or fiction? Myth or not?
I would say that's a myth, Mike. I think a lot of people are maybe over intimidated in terms of just the volume of information and options that are there. And I think, I've been a huge advocate. I know you've heard me say this before, but in all cases, I think the only way to really learn and get into that is just to start imagining, right? And start kind of playing, even with ChatGPT as a simple example. Build your own custom GPT if you want. Like, there's a variety of different ways to kind of start to get yourself immersed in that and understand that, and let it help educate you along the way, honestly. And in terms of the learning curve, I would just say, again, it comes back to your strategy and what assessment you do and your adoption of that. But in overall senses, I would say it's absolutely a myth, and don't be intimidated by the lingo and all the various models. It's very easy and quick to be able to educate yourself for what you need, without a doubt.
Yeah, I agree with that, JR. And I think, really at its core, AI is natural language coding, where again, you're programming if this, then that scenarios. And I love the suggestion about, play around with ChatGPT or Anthropic or whatever LLM you want to. Do it in a safe way. Don't do it either don't do it with work related stuff, or redact any work related stuff, but see what you can get from it. Explore the possibilities of that, not just in generating this policy or procedure, but in even business ideation. Tell me about markets our company could enter, and explore what knowledge it has in its base. Because as these models get better, and as you're able to build your proprietary LLM and lock it down and build it into your own documents where you have safety, you can really have that training already set with this. And the reality too is, when I talk to clients about having an AI policy or an AI committee, I encourage them to have younger employees as part of this process. Because I've given this example before. My son is about to be 13 years old in 7th grade. By the time he graduates high school, he will have, our education system is going to change because of ChatGPT and people concerned about cheating, to where it's a TI 85 calculator. So if he's given an essay on the Civil War, he's going to have his own school-based GPT or LM account that the teacher has access to. That's available right now, but it'll be incorporated in enough schools to where it'll be, by the time he's in high school, that's what's going to happen. And he will be graded by the prompts and questions he gives the LLM to get the content to combine it for an essay. And he won't be graded on the final essay. He'll be graded about how he puts that together and the human input on how he combines that. And so those people in school, as we change our education system, they'll be entering the workforce in 2 to 3 years, and they're going to have more experience. So even as, if you think of learning curve being not just one employee, I can figure this out, but how do I get my whole team to do it? You're going to have a workforce in 5 to 7 years that have been trained on this since high school and have more knowledge, and kind of erase that learning curve that you may think be a part of that myth.
Yep. I think those are great pointers, JR. Heath. I think I'll just want to touch upon another aspect of this. Completely agree with that. It's a myth that AI has a steep learning curve. Absolutely. With resources like ChatGPT, and relevant resources present, it's very simple to just talk to an AI and sort of learn that, right? I think, but just touching on another aspect of it, when it comes to conversational AI, etc., learning AI is very simple. How do you put it into your system so that it integrates very well with your other components? Maybe it could be your telephony system, it could be your CRM system, right? How does AI fit into that? I think that's a part that needs still some learning. So AI separately can still be learned. How do we sort of fit it into your current ecosystem so that it works in a compliant way, it works seamlessly with your system of record, with your telephony systems? I think that's something that needs to be focused on. And another aspect to it, your consumers, when you're talking to them, how do you build trust amongst your consumers to interact with AI when they're coming to make payments, when they're coming to clear out their queries? I think those are some important pointers that need to be sort of taken care of when talking about AI. So separately, learning AI is just, it's very simple. How does it fit into your ecosystem in a compliant fashion and your consumers adopt it? I think that is something that needs to be taken care of.
Let's see here. We got a few minutes left. Let's throw out one last quick myth here. Companies should wait until regulators have had their say before implementing AI.
Yeah, I think being an early adopter always gives you a competitive advantage. It gives you more insights on data. The more time you have, your AI sort of has on your data to sort of process, the larger data set it has. Of course, it gives you more insights on what is the best way to sort of talk to your consumers, what is the best channel maybe to reach out to them, etc. Of course, there's a big caveat on that. If you're, of course, an early adopter, it has to be done in a way that's compliant with all the federal and state level regulations. But as long as that can be taken care of, AI can perform and give you massive value, both to you as a collection agency, because it can give you lower costs, better margins, etc. It can also boost your agent productivity and performance, as well as you can get to know more on your consumer preferences as well. So it's a win-win for all three stakeholders: the collection agency, the agent, as well as the consumer. But as long as it's done in a compliant way, I would feel that, early adopters would have a competitive advantage on this.
Yeah, I think if you're going to wait for regulations, you're going to be waiting a long time. Because the reality is, it's going to take, at least at a federal level, a long time for federal regulations. And probably, if you're cynical, it's going to occur after a major incident that happens that harms people, and it'll be kind of reactive and over-regulation that probably restricts a lot of use cases that could be used up until that event happens. So I don't think I would. I mean, I definitely would consider and look at the tea leaves and see what regulations are being proposed and considered to identify safe use cases that would be free from regulation to explore. But I wouldn't wait at all until regulations, because you'll be waiting a long time for our government system to be making laws on this that make sense for our industry.
Definitely agree, Mike, and I think he's the expert, so I definitely won't follow that up much more than read the tea leaves and then don't be reactive. That's really the best advice.
Someone should write a book on a big event and what happens after that big event.
Someone should, Mike.
All right, well, we're just about out of time, but we do have a couple of minutes before we wrap up. And what I'd like to do is go around the panel and have each of you share what you think people should do first. For anybody watching this webinar, watching it live or recording or whenever, what's the first thing they should do as soon as it's over, as soon as they go back to work? What's the first thing, the first step they should take, the first action they should take based on everything we've discussed so far? JR, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I'm moving location. So basically, my advice would be do an assessment, understand where you're at today, what you're trying to accomplish, and evaluate your strategy. And then again, inform yourself. And, obviously, there are great experts on this call. So certainly reach out to any one of us. I'm sure we'd love to chat about how we could help you evaluate that and prepare for whatever you're doing, or assess what you're doing today and see where it could be better. So again, that would be my advice.
Excellent. Thanks, JR. Namit?
Yeah, I think a shameless plug, give us a call, right? But apart from that, again, completely agree with JR. Identify your goal. What is something that you're looking at to improve in your agency? What are some of the low-level tasks that can be automated? How can you improve your customer experience, improve your agent productivity? I think those are some of the goals that you need to sort of identify. Don't take stress about it. Just identify those goals and sort of go from there.
Okay, thank you. Heath?
Yeah, I like JR's points and even his earlier point, because I think the reality is, you can adopt AI technology intentionally or unintentionally. And unintentionally is when you kind of just let that process happen through your vendors and co-pilots and Zooms and Adobes. And I think, but the reality is, I always say, start with a kind of an AI committee, scope out how we want to use it, draft an AI policy. You can use ChatGPT to help you with that. And then, kind of create a risk assessment for, what use cases do we see potential for, and, when is the right time or right vendor to work with to achieve those goals. So that's kind of the framework of AI governance. But really, it's not a matter of if you adopt AI technology, it's a matter of when, and doing it intentionally versus unintentionally or accidentally.
Excellent. Well, Heath, Namit, JR, I want to thank each of you so much for being here. A ton of great information and useful information on a topic that is changing, it seems, by the day. So thanks to each of you for being here and sharing your insights and your perspectives. Namit, I want to thank you and the team at skit.ai for sponsoring today's webinar. Everybody, again, please check them out at skit.ai. To those of you watching live or watching a recording of this, thank you so much. Always appreciate your participation. If you're watching us live, we're back tomorrow with a webinar at 1 o'clock Eastern on compensation structures in today's collection operations. If you haven't signed up for that yet, there's a link in the chat, or a link in the events calendar, on events on accountrecovery.net. Would love to see you back for that tomorrow. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Thanks so much for being here, and we look forward to seeing everybody soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.